Hi all, Samwise here with another oak video for the herb of the month, which is oak, which is who I'm sitting with right now, and this is quite the tree, so we're gonna take a little look at it. Here's me sitting at the base of the tree, and here's a little beautiful little hollow I was sitting in. Here's a hole deep into its soul. Here's a tiny little seedling coming out of its, if you can see that, a little seedling coming out of the bark. And I'm here in Logan, Ohio, in Old Logan Cemetery. Thank you so much to Debbie and to Dustin for talking to me about this tree, which is immense. So we're gonna zoom out a little so we can get a sense of it. I'm in a fairly sizable cemetery. Here is this giant 600-year-plus tree. It is big. It's in a cemetery. There's a lot of Civil War dead here. It's big and old and just big. It's really hard to get a sense of how big it is, and there's also a lot of noise, which is really interesting, and there's people here, so they might interrupt my video. There's kids playing basketball over there. There's noisy trucks and stuff that are going around, and one of the messages that I'm getting from this tree is that change and justice can take a long time. So I gave a little offering to this tree to begin a friendship conversation with it, which I can show when these people leave. But yeah, and I give some water and I sang a song, and I've been kind of sitting here just kind of asking for connection and asking if there's anything this tree would like to share in terms of medicine or wisdom with me and with anybody who watches this. And I also asked what have you seen, which I imagined coming up as a small sapling and being in a quiet forest and being tended lovingly by the people of this land, the Ofo Mesopelia, colonially known as the Adena, Hopewell, the Shawnee, the Osage. I imagined in my mind's eye people collecting acorns, gathering, singing, tending, celebrating in relationship and reciprocity with this tree being and the other tree beings here. And just, getting a wave of sadness and tiredness around. Ooh, I just got startled. By men. Just the waves of colonization that this tree has seen, because there's definitely, it's been here since before the first settlers arrived, potentially even before the very, very first settlers in the Americas. And it's seen a lot, and I've really been reflecting on oak as an energy that holds a lot of this old sad memory of what's happened, and the horrors of colonization, the horrors of war and empire. And recently I learned through Danica Boyce's course Unearthed, which is a course about, it's an audio course about how sorry, it's so noisy. How Christianization of cultures laid the foundations and groundwork for empire and for the expansion of capitalism, the expansion of war. And in it, she shares the story of a very large, culturally significant oak to the region from which I have ancestors in Hesse, or Hesse, I don't know how to say it, in Germany, and tells the story of the Donar oak or the Jupiter oak. There's lots of names, but there was a war, like a military campaign, after the Christianization of one of the monarchs in this particular Germanic-ish region, who was forcing pagan people or rural people to Christianize through violence, through war, these campaigns of war. That was Charlemagne. So Charlemagne, as part of these like campaigns to terrorize people and to force people into adopting Christianity. And as part of that, we get Saint Boniface, whose name is like Winsfurfer. I forget what his given name is, but he's basically like an administrator for the church, and like I think he's sainted because he like did a good job like expanding the church, which, you know, in this time is a very violent thing. And so there's actually a painting that I'm gonna try to either put and embed in this video, or I'll make the title of this video so that you can kind of see it, and I will put a link so I can properly cite the artist name, who I'm forgetting, but it's a painting of St. Boniface's troop felling this giant oak, which is about the same size as like the oak that I'm sitting on right now. And it makes me so sad, and it also makes me feel really like just a lot of grief, and like touch a lot of grief that I feel around the forced forgetting of my lineage's earth-based practices and ways. And I also feel really grateful in a way that there's this like painting of this very significant moment of this felling of this giant storied ancestor tree in a region that I have ancestors from in Hesse. Like I have one ancestor who was born there, and some other ancestors who were born not too far from there. Of course, much later, but they were born there like in the 1600s. And this felling of this oak tree happened in like seven something, so like the 8th century. I always get confused when I count centuries like that. But I just think about, you know, they probably would have known that story. They probably would have grown up with that history, and they weren't that far from where this felling happened. And like if you look in the painting, which I encourage you to do, I encourage you to look at it and like zoom in like on people's faces, and zoom in on what is happening in the painting, which is like they're felling a giant, beautiful, the oak tree takes up the whole giant ass painting, but the oak tree is on a hill, and I currently am on a hill right now. It's kind of hard to see, but like, you know, we're on a hill, a cemetery on a hill, right? So like trees on hills and then there's a spring, there's water underneath the tree that's being felled, and so it's a spring on a hill and a giant tree, and those are all things that are very significant to ancient peoples in my lineages, and those are very sacred things. And to find them all together, if there was like a big rock, which the tree is on a big rock, right, like in the painting, those things are really powerful, those things are very significant, and I feel a lot of grief when I look at this painting, but I also feel a lot of gratefulness for having this like touchstone and this way of tapping into that grief, because I feel like sometimes it's hard to access it and like, you know, we need to access our grief grieve our grief. Otherwise it continues to numb us or fester or like twist inside of us or like come out sideways, right? And as I'm sitting here in this cemetery, with all, you know, the noise and the men and the the men, you know, playing basketball, and I'm trying to like meditate, and they're like, "Wah!" you know, over there, and I'm just like, okay, you know, like all of these conditions are here, and I can also connect to this giant ass oak, and have this feeling of connection, and also, yeah, this grief. And, you know, I get this sense as I'm sitting here, like this oak is really holding it down for the dead in this corner of the cemetery. Like as I was meditating, I was kind of having some trouble focusing on just the energy of the oak, because what I also was getting was a lot of like unwell dead, and not like creepy unwell dead, but just like war dead, you know, because like these are a lot of like Civil War. Like this one here, I'll show you, that I'm sitting in front of, if you can see that. There we go. Is Abner. Oh, there we go. Abner Spencer. Looks like COA something, Ohio Infantry. And this says 1861, 1865. So, thanks, Spencer. Sorry to put you on camera without asking. But, yeah. So you know, I'm excited to record an episode with a colleague of mine about oak, about justice, about oak as kind of this gateway entity that is like a guardian between the realms. And so that's kind of the impression that I'm getting right now sitting here, is that this oak is really guarding this gateway of time and like holding it down for these souls. And that when I sit here and when I tap into that energy, I feel sad and irritated about the noise, but also about, like, you know, colonization being a thing and that is so complete in its project, you know. And I've really been grieving really hard, just everything, everything, you know, that the landscape is covered in the projects of colonization, that the water is like so polluted, that there's a giant train wreck like spilling toxic chemicals into the air and into the water here, and like all on the local TV and all, you know, on the national TV or whatever, and everyone's like, it's fine. It's not fine, y'all. It's not okay that that's happening, you know. And I really like weep. I weep for this world right now. As I say that, the wind rustles, the leaves kick up, and they go, ah, you know, all the dead. And I feel safe to do that, especially with like my back against this oak. It was so big. So my invitation to you, and like the medicine that I invite you to practice this month, you know, or whenever, is to connect to the trees of your lineage. Like maybe do some work, you know, who are my people? Were they Latvian? Were they, you know, whatever, and find out who was sacred to them, the trees, right? Try addressing them with like personal pronouns, like they, or, you know, whatever, as opposed to it, right? And recognizing their personhood, and also like find out what happened to them, you know? See if there are stories you can find about what happened to these trees in the land. And also see if there's trees around you that you can connect with now. And, you know, if you've ever taken a class with me, you'll know that giving gifts is a really great way to start building relationship. And so I want to show you, hi, more men. There's just a lot of men here. They left a little offering of a patch that my sweet friend Darren made. and yeah, fixing it with some fabric. And tree adorning is a big practice in my lineage, and yeah, I invite you to do that, and I invite you to find ways to adorn trees that were significant to your lineage, and find ways to connect to their histories and connect to the past in a way that feels accessible to you. Maybe spend some time sitting at their base and asking for any wisdom or guidance. See if you'd like to practice any boundary setting around that before you do that, because there's just so many people here right now. And with that, I'm just gonna leave it because I'm not alone anymore. So wow, men have no idea about personal space. They're just well, okay. But yeah, I invite you to really connect, to find ways to grieve, find ways to find those histories, and see if there's a way that you can touch those trees, adorn those trees, and build a connection, even if it's, you know, inviting in some complicated feeling. Because yeah, when we feel it, we can start to move it. So with that, I'll leave you with another beautiful shot of this giant tree. And perhaps it's a good thing that I'm surrounded by people trying to adorn this tree or appreciate this tree. It's really a very large tree, and it's clearly important to a lot of people. Yeah, I'm gonna say thank you to this tree, this being, maybe with one more shot of this giant being. All right, y'all, be well.